Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Sara Guaglione. I'm a reporter for our Publishers Daily Vertical, and we're here today to talk about the paid content model. So why don't we start out by, if you guys could introduce yourself and maybe talk about what kind of subscription or membership model you have, and if you don't have one, what kind of model you are trying to have.
You want me to start? Yeah, hi, I'm Bill Allman. I run Smithsonian.com, which is not si.edu. It's the commercial part of Smithsonian. It's the largest website from the institution. It has a larger audience than all the other 250 websites that Smithsonian has put together. And we're trying to figure out ways to monetize it, and we have a pretty robust advertising, but we're moving to subscriptions. So I'm not a subscription person yet, but I'm a good person to talk to because I'm trying to figure it all out and trying to figure out what do you need to run a membership and a subscription. Where do you find the price points? Where do you, at what point do you put the meter? What are you charging for? And I have a particularly interesting challenge, which I think maybe perhaps you, Dave, have as well. Is that people love Smithsonian. Do they love me? I don't know. You know, and maybe that's an advantage because if you're Vanity Fair, you have to love Vanity Fair, but the Smithsonian is a much bigger brand to love. Maybe I don't have to do anything, just ask for money and they'll give it to us. So it's a really interesting problem that some of you people have out there too, because I think you're all connected with brands, and the question is, what do people value, the content or the brand or both?
Yeah, I think the number one thing people have to do is just ask for it. But my name's David Grant. I'm the associate publisher of the Christian Science Monitor. We launched our digital subscription business about a year ago in full. Got to 10,000 subscribers in its first year. We also have a print weekly magazine. So we've been in this for about a year, and really looking forward to talking about it.
Hi, Chris Krewson. I'm the Vice President of Strategy for Spirited Media, which operates 3 local news sites in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Denver, Colorado. All these sites are new. Billy Penn in Philly launched in 2014, so it turns 4 years old this October. We do not have a subscription model. We have a membership model based largely on email. We're a member of the News Revenue Hub, which is a spinoff of the Voice of San Diego. We ask people largely by email to support the work that we do, but we do not restrict access to the site or search because we're a new brand. We're aimed at younger people in the cities, but the profile of people who give money so far has hewed pretty closely to the traditional newspaper older audience, which is a little bit of a bummer, so we're trying to figure that out right now. And so far it's been going pretty well. To previously answer the question, our goal, thanks to News Revenue Hub, is to try to get to 10% of our email newsletter list by the end of the first year. They see that as the metric of success, and so we think of our sites now more as email harvesters than we care about uniques and page views and things like that. It's how many emails can we get every month, and then how can we convert those to newsletter subscribers and then hopefully to members.
Hi, I'm Julianne Markow. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Voice of San Diego. And as was mentioned, Voice of San Diego is a nonprofit investigative news organization based in San Diego. We focus on San Diego market, so hyperlocal. We were the first nonprofit local news organization in the country. So 13 years in the business. I'm relatively new to the industry, but we are, as a nonprofit, we are a membership model, so we rely on our readers to become members, and we solicit them through our website and through constant email barrages of asking them to support us with a variety of pitches. So trying to figure out, my big challenge is trying to figure out how to maximize our revenue. We have a pretty good success with email conversion of subscribers to members. We're at about a 13% conversion rate. And as was mentioned, part of Voice of San Diego spun off last year to form this group called the News Revenue Hub, which helps nonprofit news organizations replicate what Voice of San Diego has done.
And for-profit. Technically, we're for-profit. I mean, we haven't made a profit yet, but we're a startup. That's allowed. But we're for-profit.
Okay. So they've expanded their reach. But I'm interested in exploring how we get more subscribers and more revenue from those subscribers.
So let's start off with a question that you just posed, which is, how do publishers create a product that readers are interested in and think is valuable enough to pay for. Which, David, you just went through it, so maybe you could kind of talk about how it works for you.
Absolutely. Steve had a really great slide there about 74% of the brands that we interact with could disappear tomorrow and nobody would care. And so, like, how are you going to be in that other 26%? And so we really started with that question, which is, what would the world really miss if the Christian Science Monitor went away? And it seemed, I don't want to be totally up in the air about that, but like really focusing on what makes you distinct and what people are coming to buy. What is your real true value proposition? Talking to your most engaged readers that actually pay you and figuring out what it is they're coming to you for and being able to focus your offering around that. So for us, it's not quantity of stories. Nobody comes to the Monitor for a comprehensive news experience. That's not what they're looking for. They want our distinctive take on what's going on. And so our email newsletter product, right, they're not actually seeking us. They don't have to come to csmonitor.com. They want us, but we're trying to make it as easy for them as possible to consume it. So we have a email newsletter, comes to you 5 days a week. In the evening, we have a lot of readers all over the world, so it's sort of it's spread when they actually end up reading it. But that has 5 curated, the 5 best things we could produce that day, where we produce a short story for each of them, so you can read it really quickly and understand what's going on. So when you talk to the people that really matter, we think of them as, we call them whales. These are the people that are super consumers and actually pay. You find out what they really value and you build this service around that. And so in doing so, you stay distinctive, you stay answering that question, what would the world miss if we were to disappear, really deeply and well. And then you can see this whole array of other features and concepts that sort of like form around that, which is really fascinating. And it gives you kind of a product roadmap, or at least like kind of questions that you really want to answer that your readers would probably be super into and be really interested in. One of those for us, for example, is audio. We've just launched we have an audio read-through of our daily email newsletter every day because people want to do it on the go, right? We want to be available to them. And now we're thinking, well, actually there's probably some storytelling opportunity around that because people are obsessed with audio, right? Like there's an audiophile out there that really loves this. And so you start to see this like picture coming into place of how could you serve those people, the people that actually pay, the people that really do support you deeply and well, better and better over time.
I have a question for you.
I'm ready.
You, like me, have a mothership. It's been around for a long time. I used to subscribe to the print version eons ago when I was a reporter. Okay. How much of your content is from that print subscription, and how many of your current subscribers actually also subscribe to print? In other words, what we're struggling with, and I'm sure you guys out there are too, is do you make the premium product your existing mothership product, or do you create something new which is not part of the print? In other words, the print thing is fine, but we're going to add a layer on that, like audio that's special, because we're in the same boat. 96% of the traffic that comes to Smithsonian.com does not read the magazine articles.
Right.
They read the stuff we create.
Well, and that's the main thing. I think you really need to focus on, like, I think we overfit these things so much. We, as publishers, we assume all of our readers read every email newsletter we ever send out, right? And we put in, when you look at the features section, particularly of like membership type sites where they're like, and you get this, and you get that, and you get this thing, and you get the slide deck, and you get the...
Wait, there's more.
Wait, there's more. Like there's all this stuff, right? And the readers just don't care, right? There's so many member forums that are just like devoid of actual humans, and you're making a journalist go in there every day and post something that nobody cares about. So what does that say? You have to focus on what's the actual overlap. And for us, we know we have 32,000 print weekly subscribers, and about 3,000 of them are digital subscribers also.
So 10%.
So 10%. So overfitting for the 10% of people that may have possibly our email open rates 50% for our paid email, right? So on any basis, on any day, like 300 people maybe of that whole group are seeing everything that we're putting out. So to me, it's about being super efficient with the content and making sure that you are getting the most value out of every single, especially when you're smaller like we are, and like a Spirit Media, Voice of San Diego, right? You have to get the most leverage out of everything. And so thinking about the super user who sees it 2 or 3 times, that person probably doesn't care because they love you for a lot of other reasons. We're trying to figure out how do we get the most leverage out of everything. So that's sort of our guiding principle, more than exclusivity or does this go here or does this go there? It's like, what do these people want? One last thing about print is the number one thing that print people want is print. Like literally the form is the number one value. So if people that are overstressing about like where does the content go, like as long as it's printed out and physical, that is the number one thing that they care about.
To put it a slightly different way, David, what you're talking about in terms of, and to go back to what Steve said earlier about transparency, what we're learning through membership is that it's a little bit of just ask for it, and it's a little bit about tell them why you're worth it, right? When you talk about writing a précis of each story and explaining to them why that story is valuable, you're really talking as much about your organization and its role as you are about the news, which is a different step for publishers, which traditionally reported the news and then stood back. But it's some of this in trying to get people to donate or support it or pay for it is, this is why it's worth something, which is a storytelling, right? Which reporters are pretty good at, but everybody sucks about talking about themselves, right? The reporter who slogged through muck, and we had a reporter this weekend in Pittsburgh covering the Kenny Chesney concert, which is usually a mess, like mass arrests and incredible littering and vomiting, and it's like. But she went through, documented this very carefully on Instagram, and then in a Sunday email newsletter said, "This is why you should support us, because nobody else is going to step over Kenny Chesney puke for you." And we got a couple of people subscribed to that. We have in our Slack channel, we have bots set up to track donations and tell us why people donate. In one of our markets in Denver, it's fascinating because we're getting money literally because people are terrified of the Denver Post disappearing. And they don't want to support Alden by giving them money and subscribing, and so they're giving money to us. I mean, that's not to denigrate the great work of our reporters in Denver. They do a phenomenal job, but literally some of the people are, I don't even live in Denver, and I don't want its journalism to go away. Take my money. Like, that's happened a couple of times, which is crazy. And we're not talking about incredible amounts of money, but it's in the thousands of dollars, So it's because of that story. The story is out there, and you're sort of facilitating the telling of it.
And just to add to that, one of the things that we do is ask. And for instance, just this last week, we sent out an ask to all of our subscribers who are not yet donors to the organization. And we send these out pretty regularly. And told them why the news was important. And we picked a very important story that our organization is breaking around sexual misconduct in public schools, and highlighted that and said, you should support us because no one else is covering this. And if you care about truth and journalism and what's happening in your community, basically pony up. I always want to be a little more direct than our editorial staff wants us to be. But, and we did. We got, in 2 hours, 10 people, which doesn't sound like a lot, but those are 10 people who we now have in our database and we can now cultivate as donors. And the other thing, it's a little bit different maybe than what some of you are doing, but once we have people's names, so we have 2,700 people who donate to us on a regular basis, 40% of whom are recurring donors, member donors, we are constantly going to them and saying, hey, great to meet you, Bill. Thanks so much for being a supporter. I noticed you give us $10 a month. Would you consider increasing your donation to $15 a month because news matters? And lo and behold, a lot of them do. So it's constantly trying to reach, as we say in the I've worked in nonprofits for a dozen years, so we're always trying to reach a little deeper into people's pockets. So it's not so much about selling them new products as selling them the value of what we're offering. But we do also, I just wanted to say real quickly, to some of the earlier comments, we have very finely segmented our reporting. So we offer not only our general newsletter, which is all investigative reporting 5 days a week, but then we have a politics report that goes to those super nerdy insiders who care about what's happening in the city halls around the county, or the environment report or the border report. So through these newsletters, we've sliced our market to go directly to those people. So we found that works. And then we can appeal to them to say, hey, you want more coverage about what's happening in border immigration, support us so we can expand our coverage.
Well, yeah, Julianne, I remember you were saying that you guys have a tiered membership program as well, right? There's like the one-time donor, and then I think $35, right, is like the second tier, which is a recurring membership, and then there's the highest one, right?
Right. So very traditional nonprofit model. So we'll happily take anyone's money if they want to give us $5. Thank you very much. But we start membership at $35 level, and that you don't get anything other than that. You get invited to coffees and cocktail parties with other members, and you get to sit up close and talk to the journalists, which people who are super insiders love. They come in and they say, hey, where's Lisa? I want to go. Can I meet Lisa? I've been reading Lisa for a really long time, right? So there's that personalization, that personal connection. And then as people move up into different levels, if they become a $100 to $499 donor, then they get a little bit something else, and then $500 a little something else, and then our super high donors get invited to more exclusive events and more intimacy with the reporters, which is what these people are looking for.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that I know for a lot of publishers, reaching out to readers has really been successful using email. But Julianne, you guys have also reached out to other organizations where you know your readers are passionate about, right? Like I remember you were telling me about reaching out to environmental organizations. Do you want to talk about that? Because that's
Yeah, so we have about 100, we're small, right? San Diego market's 3.2 million people. We've got 175,000 monthly visitors to our website, 23,000 subscribers, and 2,700 members. So we have a pretty good conversion rate. We just need to expand that market. So since I've joined the organization last year, trying to figure out how do we reach more people. And because we know from the comments in the donation boxes and a lot of requests for information and casual surveys that we do of readers, we know they care about news as a thing, as a social construct, as the fourth estate. We know that those are the kind of people we're looking for. So what I've been doing is reaching out to other arts organizations or environmental organizations, so Surfrider Foundation or Coast Keepers or the Art Museum, and asking them to do just an audience list swap. So I don't actually take their list, but we'll give them advertising and an exchange. It might be a sponsored email, so direct email blast promoting an opening exhibition. But then we ask them to send out a testimonial to their list of 10,000 members saying, hey, you clearly care about arts and culture in San Diego because you're a member of the Museum of Art. If you're not reading the culture report from Voice of San Diego, you should check it out, right? And then we're not asking them for money, we're not asking them to subscribe, we're just trying to get them to our website, get them to the culture report, so they say, oh, that's interesting. So doing that with all our different newsletters and trying to pick off these audiences who somebody else has already identified for us because they're contributing, they're a member of some other nonprofit in town.
I have a question for both the Ask people. It seems like there's somewhat of a continuum. I'm thinking a lot about this. I may be overthinking it. Between one end, it's a donation, help us, help the cause, help this. And then on the other end, I would think sort of Rob was talking about and you were talking about is productization, where we're actually selling you something. And it's a subscription, more of a subscription. And I'm in the middle of that because people donate to the Smithsonian all the time, and yet I want to sell them something that has value to them. Do you think there's a problem with like donor fatigue? Whereas that's what I fear is if I keep saying, hey, help support the cause, this is great, someone says, sure, you get your top 3% of people who care, and then everyone else just reads the content and says, this is great, but they're not, I worry that they're not going to be repeatable, unlike a product that I'm creating that they want every single time. So do you think about that in your economics?
Yeah, well, so I think about it a lot because I spent 10 years working in museums, and you do experience that in museums, as you probably know from Smithsonian, right? But the difference is being a news organization, particularly an investigative news organization, is it's something people do want, and they recognize, and every day you're sending them something that they care about, or most every day. I mean, we have our best performing newsletter has a 60% open rate. I find you get a little bit less donor fatigue, but I mean, we do have churn. We do have people who are like, yeah, I'm not going to.
I gave it the office already.
But we have a 40% recurring 40% of our donors are on a recurring, some kind of monthly donation. And once you get those, trying to hang on to those is pretty good. But that's why we're trying to expand our audience. But also, one of the reasons. So I know I'm now chumming the waters here, but want to talk to some of you guys on the advertising side because we do need to figure out how to better take advantage of advertising opportunities and see what that looks like.
One of the things that we weigh when we think about subscription versus membership is our brands are brand new. In Denver we've been around for a little more than a year. Philadelphia is our oldest market, going on 4 years, and so we didn't, especially since we're still trying in a market of the city of Philadelphia is like 1.3 million. The region is 6 million. We have a staff of like 5 in Philly. So we're never going to be able to make the comprehensive argument, right? To go back to what David said earlier, it's not necessarily about being comprehensive, it's about being essential to a certain audience. Are you where they will turn? And that's why we curate stories instead of like aggregating them, because we have such a small staff. I don't want to have them rewriting the freaking Philadelphia Inquirer every day. That's a stupid use of their time. But it's not investigative, right? Because investigative reporting with a staff of 5 does not mean we could do something every day, right? They'd be working on like monthly projects. We go like they'd never hear about us for a month, and then we come out with something whether somebody saw it or not, because we couldn't build the habit of bringing them to our sites. So membership is a way for us to kind of like split the beast a little bit and try to still take advantage of creating interesting content every day, but not put a paywall around it. So not limit who could see it. Frankly, because there wouldn't be that many people, we're still struggling to try to get out there and break out when we don't have a lot of money to pay for much besides salaries and real estate. But we have been building since the beginning, almost by accident, email lists. Denver has honestly been the best at that since their launch, and the other sites are learning a lot from them in terms of trying to target by email. We all sort of jumped into the social bandwagon in the beginning and had some great early successes on Facebook, like everybody, and now we're sort of in a pivot world where we're trying to build that direct relationship to the point of this conference. And so it's more about trying to, like if you have an established brand, I think the conversation is different than if you're trying to build a brand, right? And we're trying to create and build new brands, and we're proving to be pretty good at that so far. We can tell a story to our current investors and hopefully new ones that we can go into a city and build something that is worth supporting within a year, which is a pretty great story to tell, but it's different from trying to take a brand that's established, and it's like, I don't know, it's like offense versus defense, or like those are the kind of metaphors that go through my mind.
If I might add just one sort of broader thought around this. The American Press Institute did some really good readership about why do people pay for news, okay? And one of the smallest groups, 9% of people, are the journalism supporters. And they're mostly all liberals. Like that's basically what you're doing, is like you go tell liberal people like please support us. That equals journalism supporter. And that's real, right? There are whole news organizations that are backed up by liberal journalism supporters, right? They think that's good. So at a fundamental level, that's 9%. And so transparency isn't just around your worth to like the world as like journalism as the fourth estate. It's also around like, why does this product rock for you? Like, why does this leave you feeling less neurotic about the news, less like, tortured about what's going on in the world when you read the Christian Science Monitor? And we spend a lot of time talking about that, which is a product feature, right? But it still is about transparency. So I think we do need, the appeals that come easiest to us are the support the media appeals. The research says, like, as you said, 3%, API says 9%, like you're skimming off like a very narrow pool there. And so what you have to do is be that transparent around why your product is good. Like we say it explicitly all the time. Like our mission here is to make your life better, is to make you smarter in less time. Please look at this thing and tell me why we're not doing that, right? Like here's this beautiful thing. Our appeals come directly from editors or from a human, like they're written by me or somebody, our editor or somebody like that. And they talk about these things like very directly. Like, you should listen to the audio. It's really great. You can do it anywhere. It's really simple. We just released it out to the open on iTunes. So, those are the sort of ways that you can just address it directly. Tell people what you want them to know. I think we have this hang up around just saying, Julianne already mentioned it, like, say what you want people to understand and say it over and over and over again. And
Don't assume they saw it the first time.
Yeah, don't assume. Look at your open rate and then say 15% of people open that thing. That means 85% didn't. That means you have to tell them again. Like that's this is no dud email marketers, but it is like a real moral hang up for publishers sometimes.
Yeah, and going back to talking about publishers and a direct relationship with their readers, I find it really interesting that you're saying your editor-in-chief will write these emails directly to readers and respond directly to readers. And I remember you saying, oh, that might not seem like a great, way to spend his time, but if anything, that's a great way to spend your time, right? Because if you're creating a relationship with readers, they're more willing to think that it's a valuable relationship.
Just to be clear there, when people respond to a marketing email, they get a human who writes them back. It's often the editor of the paper or me. And the people who write them, like the managing editor or section editors, also get them and they respond back also. So some of those things go in our customer service center, but a lot of them get answered by us.
And I would just say on that connection, that personal connection, one of the things that surprised me most when I joined this organization is we host these quarterly member coffees. And we got about 100 people who will show up for them. And people show up with checks because they're so excited to be there, and they do get to have a personal conversation with the editor-in-chief or with the reporters who are there. And for it may be the 9%, because these are our most loyal, most connected members, but it deepens that connection, and those people are at the core of who we have. So to David's point, though, it's trying to figure out, okay, we've got a really solid hold of that core, and now how do we get to that next layer of reader and supporter?
I do think getting paid by check was one of the biggest surprises of launching membership. Like, we planned for credit card integration. We planned for, like, what about Apple Pay? And it's like literally, hey, how do we, like, cash this check that someone physically sent to our office when we asked them to give us money? It takes work to find our physical address on our sites. Like, it's not the easiest thing in the world. Maybe we should make it easier, because we're getting people, like, we asked for money by email, and their first instinct was to write us a check, which I never in a million years would have guessed.
It's because they're all older.
Sorry.
Yeah.
They're habituated to writing checks. There you go.
So one last super quick question, because you mentioned churn, and I wanted to fit this in, is, how have you guys been able to use data and tracking to mitigate churn, to make it, so that there's less friction for readers to subscribe to your products?
Well, I don't have a subscription product yet, but I will tell you the data we use is we get about 8 to 10 million uniques a month, and about 150,000 of them come 10 times a month. So we know there's a core there. It's not big. It's 1%. Anyone out there thinking it's going to be more than 1 or 2%, unless maybe in your models, but it's a small group, but they're very committed. They're hardcore, and so we're looking at that group. We're targeting that group specifically, and we'll see whether or not the capture rate for that will be.
Start your relationship the right way, which is a value-based appeal, not a flash sale, not some other sort of thing, because if you start on price, then what are we always going to think about you with? Through the lens of price. So start the relationship in the right way. Onboard people really well. If you're not explaining to people how to actually use this thing and telling them what value they're getting, they're never actually going to use it the way you intended, and then they're not going to see the value that you're actually already creating for them. So, like, it doesn't end. That first month after they subscribe is super, super, super important. We're just now getting into being able to target our least engaged paid readers through email sort of utilization, and so being able to target them with specific journeys. And I say journeys because you need automations to handle this at scale, right? So we need to be able to say, if you have this certain behavior, that kicks off some email campaign to bring you to someplace else. And we also have that for our cancels, and so that a cancel is not the end of the relationship. The cancel is just, hey, this person, maybe they can't pay for it now, maybe they're not using it now, but if I explain it to them in a different way, I have a shot at getting them back. And those are the two horizons we're really going toward right now, is utilization-based journeys. So if you're engaged with this, or less engaged with this, how do I get you engaged? And if you've canceled, how do I build a way for you to come back?
We'll know more when membership turns a year old, which is when a lot of these credit card things for the recurring members are set to re-up. And so since we've been doing this for about 4 months yet, we have seen people cancel only because they have accidentally signed up twice, right? Or, because that's what happens in e-commerce, right? So I think after this has been a year old, and we can sit back and reassess. And there's a whole, to David's point, and the News Revenue Hub has built this pretty great system that, even after somebody says, no, I don't want to give you money anymore, there's a series of are you sure messages that go, and we try to leave them with a good taste in their mouth, right? Yeah, don't go away. Yeah, but I just don't know yet.
So we also have a system, same system, that follows up with people to say, please consider renewing. We noticed you're no longer a member. Would you please consider renewing? So it is staying in touch with them, but also, again, about deepening this relationship. Anyone who is signed up as or categorized as a member in our system gets a email pretty much every month from us, either something we call the impact report, which is written by our managing editor, and it basically reminds people, even though they've been reading the news all along, to say, this is what our stories have done specifically for our region during the past 2 months. So it may be a assembly person who passed a piece of legislation and specifically said, I read about this in Voice of San Diego and now I'm taking action. So that the reader feels like, oh, I was part of that. I've made a difference. So we do those, and also member newsletters that our editor-in-chief writes, and they're very personal, and they're kind of his thinking about what's happening out in the community and in the world at large and how it affects San Diego. And people love those. Those have really high open rates.
Sara and panel, this was a great opening discussion. Thank you very much. We're going to do this. We're going to do the Q&A in the round table because we're running quite long because this was such a good discussion. Thank you guys very much. Part of Direct, and let me invite